Presenting the world's greatest everything. Presenting the world's greatest everything. Everything.
Tony Caravan. You've been subjected to a highly sophisticated form of propaganda.
Just what you need, not what you do.
Good morning.
And a bright good morning to you. I feel good, like James Brown said. It's Sunday, March 28th. I realized I mislabeled yesterday's video as put a 2 instead of a 3. For those regular followers, today is beverage is Thunder. I believe it's called Thunder Cola, the Thunder Diet Cola or something like that. Anyway, it's caffeine in the form of cold beverage. And as far as the
weekend weather,
it's looking right now, and I'll just give you a quick glance of it for those fellow people in the Midwestern region. It's 5:27 a.m. on the Eastern Standard Time in the former United States. And it's looking like right now it's where I'm at. At this time, it's 55 degrees and raining. I wonder I get that glare there. Maybe it's from that piece of paper. I'm not sure. There's just too much glare. Is that better? I don't know. And so today, Sunday, it's going to get up to 61 degrees, but 31 on the overnight, which means that's below freezing Fahrenheit, and 97% chance of rain today. So I guess we're going to test out, again, people following this thing. With all those roof tiles, yesterday I was out in the yard, and we'll get to the show in a second. The beginning of the show always deals with some of my personal things, because there's, believe it or not, there are personal people who care about the host sometimes. So to continue that conversation, yes, there were tiles on both sides of my house and some in the backyard. I actually hooked the hose up yesterday, which one should not do, particularly with the forecast for the coming week that shows, if that is in focus, it seems to be in focus, several nights where it looks like the temperature is going to go down to in the 20s. Not a good thing. But what can you do? That's basically Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday are going to be some tough times for the early planning. Anyway, that's your
weekend weather.
And moving right along, let's get on with it.
Good morning.
Didn't we say that before? I guess so.
Here's what's happening.
So, the title of this show is Wishing Upon a Star. And, you know, in my description, I put "Your life is your own," to quote William Arthur Ward. If you can imagine it, you can achieve it. If you can dream it, you can become it. I remember there was a girl I knew in college, where I said I was the summer term president, and I was the dual president of Penn State University for one summer. And, you know, and I guess it's one of those things, I'm just pulling up my title card to take a look at it myself. Wishing Upon a Star. It's kind of a nice title card, actually, too. And the whole concept of wishing upon a star, goes back to the Greek astronomer Ptolemy. And that's Ptolemy, but it's PT, the P is silent. He was a Greek astronomer, circa, around 120, 150 AD in that particular time. So it's, most people have, when they think about wishing upon a star, they think of a particular movie or a character that may, that you find out in your backyard that makes noise. And you have to watch it because the organization that character and you know, that that might be phrase might be misconstrued to have been alluding to is an organization that basically they actually name the copyright laws after because they've co-opted them and in such an nobody talks about. That's something you never hear anymore, right? And then you never hear any more about. If you know what I'm talking about, you know what I'm talking about, right? It's like that goes along hand in hand with my shirt. You don't know what you don't know. Anyway, this is television. Television adds a few pounds to you. So they say. I don't know. I really don't know. Anyway, we got through all that, and let's get into it. I'm not going to talk about, the past couple shows. I told you before, I watch these programs afterwards. And, for several reasons. One, I'll go over to find errors, when you're talking for like an hour or two nonstop, and you're paying attention to certain, technical things and things are popping up. Like, for example, there's something that's popped up, which is basically my YouTube telling me that I'm live type of thing and showing me my title card, which is fine. And I want to check that. But as you're doing this stuff, and sometimes, not always, but oftentimes on the live web broadcast, the stream, you'll get people in the chat because there's live chat. And so when you're paying attention to all these things, sometimes you misspoke, or you said something wrong or you typed something in. And so I'll watch and I'll make sure I'll catch that. And like I always say, I always will come back the following day. And that's what these, the first 10 minutes of the show sometimes is just about me, things I talked about before, or correcting something that, I may have misspoken or just didn't pay attention to properly. I also tend to load up on the caffeine in the first 5 minutes or so. And yeah, so someone's telling me, all right, that they have a problem watching over in Ireland. Yeah, well, it's so far the internet is working pretty good here. But anyway, today's show is not going to be like most shows in the sense that some of them come off serious, serious, especially when I get into, and I don't, I'm not a serious person in the sense. I mean, I think we're all serious people. I take life seriously. I take people seriously. But the idea is that, I'm not a serious person. And people who've known me throughout my life know that I'm kind of a lighthearted person to begin with. But some of the topics discussed sometimes here, can be serious. And and in some cases people will actually, take them almost as a downer, particularly when I'll talk about the corporatocracy and how government, it may seem hopeless to some people when I say, the former United States or Western civilization has fallen and it's not coming back, that sort of thing. And while I'm not going to go against, anything that I've said along those lines because it's true. Today I wanted to talk about something that's a little bit different. And the purpose of the title card that says "wishing upon a star," and quoting, the Greek astronomer Ptolemy, that and that quote from Arthur Ward, which was about, imagining something, and you can achieve it, and dream it, and you can become it. And I was alluding to this summer presidency I had, student government presidency, Penn State University, and the resident hall presidency. I was this dual president for one term, summer term. That and this ties into everything. It was that whole idea was for me. It wasn't a power trip. For me, it was just a thing. I was more or less thrust into that position because I was the only guy on who was on staff, I guess, so to speak, uh in student government, who was qualified, and who my peers, my fellow, uh whatever you would call people who sat on those various boards, student boards, uh, they voted me to do that, knowing I was going to be there for the summer. And I wasn't the only one. They could have put somebody else in that position, but they chose me. So anyway, it's a position of power, I guess, in some people's minds. It's certainly good on a resume. In fact, I think there was one position, one job I got that I think that was actually the reason they gave me that job, because that was a big deal to them. And I guess being the student government president of a university with 30 some thousand students is a big deal to certain people. But I wasn't on a power trip. I was just me. I was just like, I don't know. I'd be more likened to the character, the Alan Alda character on MASH, or you know, uh, the Bill Murray character in, in that movie, where they had the RV thing, whatever that was, Stripes or something. In other words, I was a fun loving, you know, president, and I had to admit it, and the university wasn't too happy with it. In fact, I tried to be an RA the following term because, you get free, I think you get free housing and stuff and all of that. And because I had thrown some parties in the summer, uh, I was, you know, that was the reason. Tony, we all love you, and all the other RAs, because the RAs, were all my friends, and but you did, you do have a kind of a reputation as being like a party thrower. Well, there's this girl, especially, young girls, you college age, I'm a couple, know, college age, 18, 21, basically, right? There was this one 18 or 19-year-old girl, uh, and she had some kind of, I don't know, she used to follow me around, like, you know, just everywhere I went. Like she was like my sidekick or something like that. And she had a poster on her wall, and it was that line that if you can achieve it, or if you can imagine it, you can achieve it. If you can dream it, you can become it. And I just tell you that little anecdote, um, and she had other positive thinking type of things on her wall. And and so that's what I want to talk about today. Not that person, not myself, not college days, not partying or any of that stuff. But I just wanted to lead into it with that, with that because that was a time frame and a mindset that a lot of people have, and people still do have. And so when I talk about, there's yesterday, hope is a 4-letter word. Some people might misconstrue that as hopelessness. And that's not wasn't the point I was trying to get at. And I haven't received any negative comments along that line, um, because most of the comments I get are positive comments. I mean, I would say 100% are, generally speaking, across all the platforms that I'm on. And again, YouTube is more or less my gateway to using this technology to broadcast live in the morning. And because it's YouTube, it archives it instantly. And so then I can share this thing on a Twitter, a Facebook, a Minds, or wherever, LinkedIn, any other platforms that are out there that where people can look at it. And then depending on the specific platform and how it works and how it's played, in some instances, particularly on one of them, I can boost it and get, I might get 1,100 views on that platform because it's played you know, within its servers. In other words, once you upload the video, then the video exists there. And so that doesn't show up on my statistics, on this particular, or I guess I would point here. And so that's confusing to some people because I'm, I'm not really, I've never really been accepted in the YouTube community because people want to hear what they want to hear. And when I call it as it is, uh, that's a turnoff to certain people. That's a turnoff to most people. Nobody wants to hear hope is a 4-letter word. Nobody wants to think that there's a corporatocracy, these people pulling the strings of politicians, that their favorite politician, or when I say cult of personality, they might think, that goes against some person that they're following, or whatever. They want it. They want nonsense. And it's like, I'm not going to be the type of person that just it's an echo chamber, right? Preaching to the choir. There are plenty of people out there doing that sort of thing. And those people get hundreds of thousands of views, or at least tens of thousands of views. Most of those people are also monetized, and they and use clickbait. Well, I'm neither monetized nor do I use clickbait. If I say this topic is about wishing upon a star, and I'm going and the graphics I use are my original graphics. Like I said a few programs ago, I actually bought there was most of my graphics are original or from my graphics that I have either purchased or I've graphically designed. My typography is chosen, selected. I do all this work because that's what I do. But if I don't have that particular graphics, in my own personal collection, I will purchase it. And a couple episodes ago, I actually purchased. It cost me $32.50. It was a $65 thing, but I got it 50% off. A piece of art to explain when I was talking about the farmer leaving the farm. And the farmer was an analogy for the corporatocracy and the idea that we are, and I guess this is one of those other things that certain people just tune out because of, and that is the idea of there being a corporatocracy that controls government and that we're on a tax farm / consumer farm. And I wanted an image, a realistic image, that would show a farmer, pickup truck, and a cattle. And I searched far and wide. I had nothing in my vast collection of files that I've accrued over past several decades. So I purchased it. So in effect, on that video, I actually lost $32.50. And and that's fine. But these other people are becoming, YouTube millionaires, or YouTube has become their life, their job. More power to them. Though as I've talked to before, I'm not particularly interested in people that clickbait and that constantly just say, "Hey, look what I bought," right? When you knew that they were broke and that it's through clickbait and that sort of thing. I don't play that game, and I never will play that game. And I can't play that game. I'm demonetized on this platform. You want to buy a cup, you could, I might make 50 cents. I don't even know, right? I just do this stuff because it's like I say, it's my shtick. This is television, as Tom Green says. This is 21st century television. So I want to have all the, accoutrement, as I say. All right. So I think we got enough of that prelude out of the way. And and I also want to preface this by saying, this isn't some sort of psychiatric advice. I'm not trying to tell you how to live your life or anything like that. The decisions you make are your own. And that's always been the way I approach anything I do, whether I'm writing a book, whether it's one of my beat poetry tracks, or whether it's one of these programs. It's like this, I'm just telling it as my experiences, my life, and ideas. So, I have this video is listed under two things I believe on my Rock Flux YouTube channel. It's Rock Flux. So I have there's a thing here. If I could find it, wherever the heck it is.
So you found us.
What is it trying to tell us?
No strings, no catch. You own everything.
Now stay tuned to Rock Flux.
And that's Rock Flux is one of the names. My main website that I'm building at this point is TonyCaravanLive.com. And that's down below where it says where the description is, and it's sometimes it doesn't really show. It says show more. If you click on show more, you'll see two links, and you'll see TonyCaravanLive.com, and then you'll see GreatSolarStuff.com. And that's these things like my NOAA radio, and it's harder to see in the background right now because of the lighting, but I could probably shine the light there a little bit. Is this power, this power pack thing here, which is still at 92%. So it holds its power. And that's the thing you could plug in case of a power failure or something like that. I actually thought I was going to have to use it the other day because we had that 50, 60 mile an hour gust of wind, which, as I started earlier talking about, and maybe I will put that there. It also shows Everything You Know Is Wrong t-shirt. And you can see my book. I constantly have to tell you this. See, everything I see is backwards. So you're trying to point to something. And of course, my book codex is there. That would be the way in which I would be monetized. If someone would say, read my book, buy my book, or listen to one of my tracks or something like that. My tribute to Louis Armstrong is the white handkerchief. I'll try to keep this glare down to a minimum. That helps, doesn't it? Don't fall off, please. Okay, so I think we covered enough of that. So if I can find a place to put these things that they don't interfere, and we can get on with the show. So, wishing upon a star, something that's almost 2,000, a concept that, was almost 2,000 years old, based on, what we consider history as mythology. anything that goes beyond, say, the past couple hundred years, um, in Western libraries, say Western science, which has become scientism, anything that seems to have been written, beyond that point, we put that and categorize that as a society. I'm generalizing. I don't mean me or we as you and I. We categorize that as mythology. People talk about Greek myths, right? There are certain Roman historians that are argued over. Uh, the same way people argue over, say, biblical religious texts from all sources, um, despite the fact that the documents have been found, and say a Dead Sea Scroll confirms something that was written in this particular gospel, or something that was not included because some council decided not to include that in the official, final tally, whatever what was to appear in various. I'm pouring soft drink, my diet soda, into my cup. It's coming out of here. I keep this in here with a couple extra ice cubes to keep it cold. But the idea is that you take everything at you know at face value, um, and you should be somewhat skeptical of any one single source of information. Doesn't matter. I mean, I talk about something. If you haven't heard it before, my advice is to research it. And when I say research, I wouldn't just like type it into a search engine and say, oh, well, yeah, I see somewhere there that says the same thing. Okay, that must be true. Like I've always said, no, I usually, when I'm confronted with something that's like new, interesting, maybe shocking, or controversial, whatever, I'll go to as many as 7 different sources. I mean that. And I've talked about that before. It's whether it's a health thing, someone says, hey, this will take care of that ailment, or you may have this if you feel this way, or if it's a statement, because you can't trust the internet that way. And the only way, not but you also can trust the internet if you dig deep enough, and if you find enough reputable sources in number that that agree with that thing. So if 5 out of 7 seem to support something that I said, or that you've read, or something like that, then I would say there would be a higher probability that that's something that you can feel comfortable with. But you can never be 100% absolutely sure, because it's not that everything is wrong. It's this other one back here, which you can't see right now. You don't know what you don't know. And that while you are alive, it's only firsthand information that you can really trust. That's it, firsthand. So if something happens, an event happens, and you witnessed it, well, that's firsthand information. If your grandparent or parent, uh, you know, tells you a specific thing occurred, or whatever, that they experienced, not something that's hearsay to them, secondhand to them, but firsthand, is saying, that stone wall in the backyard I built with your grandfather. whatever, and we use those stones from that quarry down there, or that castle on yonder hill that was falling apart. We dragged those stones down, and that's how we built that retainer wall. Okay. Well, that to me, that's firsthand knowledge. That's the guy who built the wall telling you where he got the stone from. But in the absence of that, everything else we know, even when we read, a book, a teacher,
history, someone's giving us, it's secondhand, third hand, fourth hand information. And we should always be careful about that. And that's a rather long way of prefacing, this discussion. But that's important to know. And so you just, don't, believe everything you see. It's that Poe line, believe half what you see, and believe nothing you read, and half what you see. Is that the line? Let's get that straight, because that's a good line. I'm going to look this up. Believe only. Here we go. Let's see what they say. Believe nothing you hear and only half that you see. Edgar Allan Poe. And I guess there's some quote investigator. Yeah, and that's from the System of Dr. Tar and Professor Feather, which I wrote a screenplay about. Someone's questioning. There's always somebody trying to question everything on the internet. And that was someone questioning. But that is a good, that is a very good way of approaching that. And I did write a really good screenplay for the System of Dr. Tar and Professor Feather, which, there is still some very remote possibility that I may make that movie before I leave this, density or whatever it is. So the subconscious mind, all right, is the biggest enemy of us, of mankind, all right, of the human animal. We talked about, my book that I've discussed. I talk about the hard problem of consciousness, and the idea that people who study the brain, right, the neuroscientists, that the big question is, where do we get consciousness from? All right. And, while some people might just blanket blurt out, oh, well, consciousness is risen from the brain, is caused by the brain. Well, that statement is not accepted by modern science. And so at this, and I've said this before, at this particular moment in time, right up to the present, serious science, not scientism, considers this statement by Chalmers that they call it the hard problem of consciousness. In other words, they don't know where consciousness comes from and how we perceive the world subjectively in the first person. So you've got a brain, a bioelectric brain, in this intelligently designed android type body, right? And all these arguments of by various people, excuse me. And I don't want to get into some discussion on Darwin theory or any other kind of theory, right? Because remember, everything from the Big Bang theory to Einstein's theory of relativity to Darwin's theory, they're still theories, right? And this isn't a theoretical discussion. This is a discussion about human nature, right? The nature of man, the game of life, I guess is one other thing that I've been recently using that phrase. So you have this consciousness, right? Which is you, right? You are your conscious mind is what you consider to be you. You have a brain, but that brain isn't necessarily you. That brain is a computing device, if you think about it. Your five senses are contained within that brain, and the brain processes the information that those senses bring into your into your body, this thing. But it's your consciousness that interprets that and makes decisions about life and what direction your life is going to take, whether you do this, that, who you become, what your dreams. You could even say it's your destiny, in a sense. And so that's consciousness is you. You are your consciousness. You are not your brain. I mean, everyone has a brain, but they don't, but they're different people, right? And we also seem to have this thing we call the subconscious. Now, that's a trickier subject, the subconscious, because that gets into this idea almost of the id ID, the idea that the brain, the human animal has this idea of basic needs, and that we are driven for those. We talked about the reptilian brain, right? The idea of the animal part of us, of the human, right? And there still seem, and that is, and that makes sense. It's the fight or flight, reaction to something, and that's a realistic thing, and I'll give you, a quick anecdote on that. One time I was use the word curator is use it loosely. I was a person that was put in charge of living in this. Actually, it was if you're familiar with the Yingling brewery, it was the Yingling family had donated a Tudor house, family house, to an arts council, which I later would serve, oddly enough, years later would serve on the board of a county arts council that would be based in that building, which would be was the center of the arts council, put it that way, like the arts center, I guess. But years prior to that, I had, just out of college era, I spent a summer, or I don't know. My college years are very strange, and it's hard for, I wasn't really logging, journaling my life at that time. And I've talked about this often. This all applies to, what we're talking about here. But it's, everything is, it's a personal, it's a personal thing. It's anecdotal. I wasn't really journaling my life. I was writing. I've always been writing since I was even a child. But there's like certain years that were just that kind of are semi blurred, because it's the way I don't know how many other people are like that. Like some people have this, like, they could describe themselves in fifth grade, or they knew what they were doing, you know, when they were in seventh or eighth grade, or like throughout high school and stuff like that. Well, to be honest with you, with me, the way my, left right brain thing functioned, or however, in many ways, I was just kind of drifting through life. And while I had a certain personality that seemed to be somewhat consistent, though, as I've stated, and even in my later works, written works, how I've changed, my ideas have changed, the way my outlook of the world and events and ideas have changed, drastically in some instances where I've, just done a 180. But around that particular time, post high school, college era, and entering into the, my first leap into like places like New York, Philadelphia, Washington, when I, made my leap from my hometown or college town into the real world, so to speak, out there. It wasn't as if I was journaling and I could, and I guess if I really, and I've written in my first two books, I've tried to put that into some sort of perspective. But the minute details and the day-to-day thing or month-to-month type of things are not, real. I wasn't paying attention to that because I was more and again, just ties into everything we're talking about. I was more concerned about experiencing life on a level of just pure experience of learning, and not so much concerned about as if I was on a particular path. In other words, I was still almost childlike, still that sponge, the way a small child, his brain is opened, to ideas and is just taking more information in than anything that's coming out. Right. And that was the stage that I was in for a long time in my life. And, to some people, I might have seen this, I was just drifting through life at a certain point. Though in talking with people, some people felt I had like very strong ideas and maybe even a well-defined personality. But in later years, meeting people, who felt that way, or even might have like disliked me at that time or something like that, or thought, I tried to explain to them with usually little, success, that the I was still learning. I was still like kind of an open, sponge, well into my 20s, even perhaps even into my late 20s. I really wasn't I hadn't really fully formed, a very distinct idea of who I wanted to be, what I wanted to be. I was doing things, and I was definitely, and I was 100% in, I guess, on projects and various things, and the mechanics of them. So, in other words, if I was tasked with, a certain thing, I gave it my all, but the my consciousness, so to speak, was still evolving, in a sense of I was still learning, and I hadn't really, if someone said, well, who was Tony Caravan at age, 17, 19, 24, who, what, you could define me and say, well, if I had a particular job or if I was doing a particular thing, But if they said who, when I say who was, who knows? But so anyway, so back to this Yingling. They used to call it the Yingling Mansion, but it was a Tudor building. And just like the castles, the old castles in England, when many people see these things, and that's when I think of the Tudor design architecturally. One of the things that a lot of people often remark when they see it, one of these Tudor castles, buildings, they'll say, "Wow, it's not." I imagined that that particular king was living in a much bigger, it was much bigger place, right? And so many people referred to this as the Yingling Mansion, who are the brewing family now. But in reality, that it was a pretty small building. It wasn't that big. But actually, there was a time when I actually was living in there by myself. In the transition of that becoming on its path of becoming an art center, and eventually the Council for the Arts or whatever. And so there was a room upstairs that, one of the rooms that I just had as it was my room. And the idea was I was there full time on the property, because it was a big space and it had grounds, and so I was everything from they were calling me the curator, but I was hardly the curator. I was I would say I would be more of a glorified ground guy, just taking care of the building and the grounds, type of thing. Really, I mean, it was the way I look at it. Though I was involved in meetings and various projects, etc. Well, anyway, I had friends, and I was friends with there were artists in residence there at the time. So I considered myself an artist in residence as well. And, as a writer, I would spend a certain percentage of my day doing writing on top of my responsibilities, and making sure that, the place was opened in the morning at a particular time and closed at a particular time. The gates were closed and locked, and, doors were locked and sealed and all that. And there was another writer who wasn't necessarily an artist in residence. I forget who a writer at that point who had already had written, and later on I had encountered in New York. He was publishing and I guess had some success. And I forget his name, and it's too bad. That's why I say I was kind of I was part drifting through life at that point. In other words, I was present, but I was absorbing so much that I wasn't paying attention to the minutia, to the details. It's kind of like I said when I was a child. I wasn't the type of guy to easily memorize. When I was in grade school, you memorize things like people memorize the 7 years ago. You memorize the times tables. You memorized a particular poem or something. And my brain didn't work that way. I was more interested, or I seem to be more obsessed with the content of the Gettysburg Address, the poem, right? Or even in the mathematical times table thing, the idea of the calculation, not to just say 5 times 10 is 50 or something like that, to just have the 50 come out. To me, it was more like the calculation, right? Just like the thought process of what was this poem really, what was this author really saying? What was the thought process there? what was the Gettysburg Address trying to bring out? So, and every time it would be read to me, that would be what would be going on. So it was hard for me to memorize, right? So, as time progressed, I say well into my 20s, even perhaps up to my late 20s, I was that type of guy. And so I was, and some people might have thought I was, I don't know, flighty or something, because I was always thinking, I was thinking about these things. I wasn't just, I wasn't memorizing. To this day, I still have a problem with people's names and stuff like that. But I could describe their personality to a T. That's why you'll see me look up something like that. It's like, I know what they said. I know what they wrote. They may have had an influence on my life, but, sometimes it's a struggle to deal with like a specific, the matter, the minute detail of a person's name, and I'm not the only one like that, but, there's certain people, it's like, it's why they put, hello, my name is tags on people at parties. There's a lot of people that just don't, just don't have that kind of thought process. It's like people who are visual, I've talked about this once before. There are some people, I'm a visual, my mind thinks in terms of visuals. So I can someone could describe a place they've been, right? Like that ocean scene here, and say, it was the way the surf was calm and steady. It's a very bad image that we have here right now, but it's enough to say that it seems that it's a calm surf that doesn't seem to be storm clouds necessarily. And if I didn't have that visual there, if someone just describing that, I could imagine that. And there's other people, and I've known many people like this, and you may well know too, that you could say, yes, I was sitting by the on a beachfront, and it was kind of a gray day, and the surf was calm. There were no real major waves. There was this, that, the other, and in someone's mind there's like nothing going on there. That they have to see it to say, let me see. So that's a very long way to get back to the fight or flight thing. So this writer, who I cannot remember his name for the life of me, but who has written, and I later encountered in New York when I was working in New York, him and his girlfriend had, when I was locked up, went through the process of locking up the grounds, the building, the art center, had apparently snuck into a corner in the front room. And I used to just walk through the building just to make sure everyone had left, that type of thing, do my rounds, I guess you call it anything else. I lived in the building, then I would just go upstairs into my space and do whatever I did. Wrote, listen to some music, things like that. Or I would go hang out there were two sculptors who were artists in residence there at the time, and I used to hang out with those guys at night sometimes. And well, anyway, so I go through this front room, and I'm just making sure the windows are locked and things like that. It was probably a summertime, so maybe a window may have been open, and so I was like going over and maybe closed the window, locked it, and as I was leaving the room, and it was dusk, as I got towards the door, this guy leaped out at me, right? Just as a gag, and instead of me going like, yeah, right, I went, ah, like towards them, right? You know? And so obviously it's clearly that, and this was totally just, this was the first time in my life I experienced anything like that in that sense. And so clearly in the fight or flight idea, I am not the flight type of person, because whatever, that instinctual, you know, basic brain function in my mind, I went towards, the individual. And then suddenly then your mind takes over and, oh, it's someone I know. And we talked about that. Now, remember that it was the idea, because they were taken aback by it too, right? Because, the first thing, it's like when you're a kid or something, if someone like, boo, they try to scare you, someone goes, ah, they scream or something. But instead, my instinctual response wasn't like, ah, it was, ah, so the fight or flight. And so these elements of how our brain works are fascinating. And these kinds of things are built into us. That's like, in other words, that's the biology. That's no difference than me grasping this with my hand, pulling it up and drinking, knowing how to do this, and having, again, the sound you hear is pouring. There's a small opening on this thing, so it just kind of trickles out. So that's not that's your brain, your bioelectric brain. Okay. When they talk about androids and stuff, it's like, that's what they're creating. And I guess these transhumanists and these, Google deep mind type of people, and Elon Musk, want to drill the hole in there. These are people that see the human brain, humans generally as strictly an android and completely controllable, kind of like the Frankenstein monster idea, right? Frankenstein apostrophe S monster, because so many people still, that's just another thing. It's like Frankenstein wasn't the monster, Frankenstein created the monster, Frankenstein's monster. And they see, so that's that's the way Google, transhumanists, Elon Musk, they're modern day Frankensteins, right? And they see us as these programmable androids, that sort of thing. And it, and that's that. And the fight or flight concept that, I went through a longer story talking about, is part of that basic function of the human brain. And we have many basic functions of the human brain. There's a bright light and we squint our eyes, or like I say, as we develop as the human body develops, the brain, functions, in order to aid that development and our ability to go through, this world, right? But that has nothing to do with what I call like the game of life, all right? And it has certainly nothing to do with consciousness, right? Who you are, all right? That just has to do with your basic function. The fight or flight idea, of whether I go ah or go ah, right? Is like that thing you see a doctor do for reflexes, the little rubber hammer or something where they hammer on somebody's knee to see if the knee if your reflex goes up, right? That's kind of fight or flight, right? And so that's the human, that's you as a human being, biologically, and your brain is a bioelectrical thing. But consciousness is much much more intense, much deeper than that, maybe much more, maybe more detached from that would be a better explanation. I'm sorry it took me a long time to get to this point, but the question that, the key thing now that we've got that settled, and again, you can find this, these types of discussions or these types of things written in, in volumes, of books about, the human brain, the human body. I just wanted to bring my perspective to it in that regard, and specifically, differentiate between consciousness and this thing, So, wishing upon a star is something your consciousness would do, and where we would get into this idea of what we believe, and the idea, if you dream it, dreams and achieving things, and that sort of thing. And when I say that the biggest enemy to your consciousness is this subconsciousness, that's that thing that seems to always be working maybe against us. And the idea is to somehow make your subconsciousness work towards you, with you, instead of working against you. And so when you are exposed, those who would manipulate you and want to control you, what they're doing is they're controlling your subconsciousness. All right? That's what indoctrination is. That's what propaganda is. It's, I'll use the word drumbeat, but it's not like an audible thing. In other words, they're constantly beating this drum. They're constantly trying to get something into your subconscious so that there's a voice in your head, so to speak, not a literal voice, not some sort of schizophrenic voice or anything like that. Okay. Not an aberration, but that the idea that there's an internal thing that they know, they understand this. The people who have nefarious things, goals. And they understand this. It's like advertising. They also use the word subliminal, which is way beyond the idea of something being flashed on the screen, in a fraction of a second, or between so many frames that it's invisible to your eye right now, but that your brain, it's being recorded by your brain, right? That's subliminal. And they experimented with that in, in the 60s and stuff, the 50s and the 60s, and movie theaters. You're thirsty, have a Coke, right? Well, would actually appear on the screen, but if there were so many 20 some frames per second, that might only appear for a couple of frames. So your eye, if you've ever seen a film strip, like I say, went to films. I studied film in college, and so we used to edit film, and so you would have a frame, and you would say you had like 27 frames here, it all looks like little pictures. Sometimes on an iPhone or a smartphone, they have these, for certain higher quality photos, there's a series, you see a series of photos are snapped. I'm not even sure what the purpose is. I've noticed that in a recent upgrade on my phone. But it's, if you've ever edited a video, you've seen, individual images. And the thing is, you could pull one of those out depending on the frame rate, and you might not even get a jump, especially if it's just something, a scene. Like if it were that scene, it might not even appear to the human eye that, something was pulled out. Well, the idea of subliminal is to add a couple of frames, so that, like, if I were trying to subliminally brainwash you, and so to speak, or get something across, I'm speaking to you now, right? But meanwhile, that image back here is flashing frames. You think you see an ocean scene, right? But in reality, periodically, it's flashing things like, you're thirsty, or the next time you're thirsty, drink this, or you need to purchase such and such, or, whatever. And that's what these nefarious type of people do. And that was experimented with, and it was done. And then it was, it was outlawed, as far as I know, sometime in the 60s. But are they still doing it? Are they doing it on TV now? We don't know. Like I say, you don't know. I'll get my chair right. You don't know what you don't know. My favorite shirt. It's a scary thought, because that's a form of mind control. Well, it's not even it's a form of mind control. It is mind control. And there are many ways that people who are educated in this sort of thing go after your subconscious. And we're really quite defenseless in that area. So the only defense that you really have is to self-program yourself, right? To make sure that your subconscious isn't working against you. And how do you do that? Well, you do that by telling yourself positive things, positive thinking. All right. One thing would be, as you would go to sleep at night, as you lay in bed, as you're trying to, go to sleep, to have, positive thoughts, think positive things, things to sort of like, if you're not feeling well, or, to think, wellness, I'm, healing, that type of stuff. If you're agitated, or there's other things going on, think, as you just lay on your pillow, think in terms of calm, just the concepts, almost not so much. You don't even have to form sentences in your mind or speak these things with your mouth, but just think of the concept of calmness, and being calm. Anything that might be affecting you consciously, you want to, as you doze off, or some people might meditate to these kinds of things, but you don't have to get, you don't have to really be elaborate with this and go through some sort of thing. It's very simple to do that, to just, like I said, to think in terms of, that you're a good person, that you're calm, you're calm. These things people say don't bother me. I'm not going to worry about these political things. I'm not going to be afraid of this. You know, you know, I am a good person, you know, that kind of stuff. And it would be the same thing as if, you know, some people, you know, there are people out there that use this in a different way, you know, like they have these beliefs in intention, you know, to make things happen. I don't necessarily follow that, you know, that belief, but I don't necessarily, knowing the way the subconscious mind works, I won't sit here and say that that's not necessarily partially true. So in other words, the idea of saying, you know, of sitting there, you know, lying there and being like, well, I want, you know, that you hope that you will have uh, financial, you know, some financial reward or you know, you will have money or something like that for the sake of good. You know, see that, you know, if I were to do that, that's how I wouldn't just say I want to win the lottery. You know, that's like some people like that would push this, you know, train of thought. They would take it, well, if you believe that you could win the lottery and you could get your subconscious to do it, you will. You know, and there's a movement about that. Now, I'm not trying to say that. I don't think, but but at the same time, that it's like, my feeling is that you should always, anything you think like that should always be based in good. You know, so the idea of thinking, you know, you know, positive things tied into whatever you're wishing upon the star, supposedly, right? Not negative things, not selfish things, or not things that would be negative against another person or something else. You know, it's the idea that any kind of subconscious programming, more or less, is, you know, should always be on a level that's going to help you improve and be a better person, and to defeat or overpower any negative uh, input that's being presented to you. And that negative input is this daily indoctrination and propaganda. Like I say, this, you know, the politics, pop culture as politics, and the cult of personality of individuals, raising individuals to this cult status, and people following blindly these, you know, these people and ideas. All right. And so the way to battle that is to have your own, is to kind of program your own subconscious in a positive way. And that's why I'm hesitating and kind of stuttering a little bit around this, because my goal here isn't to program you or give you ideas to program. It's the idea, it's whatever you want. So I think if you can grasp what I'm saying is, in other words, those things in your life that you want to improve, or those things in your life that are troubling you, as you go to sleep, or when you're in a quiet moment, or if you were sitting there just staring out in this scene out at the surf, or in, you know, in nature, in your yard, or a moment of solitude, just even in your own house, sitting on a sofa or a chair, or lying back in bed or whatever, is that the things that seem to be bothering you or that affect you, that you whatever they are, you should be kind of closing your eyes, meditating, in a sense, and not in any kind of like formal way. This, like I say, life isn't that complicated. You don't need these self-help books. You don't need these gurus to do this. This is just you're in control of your own life. And this is another way of taking control of your own life. And the idea that if these things are weighing down on you, all right, you feel the weight of the world, the weight of all the politics, the weight of all this negativity on television, on social media and stuff. If that's bearing down, weighing on you and causing you anxiety, stress, frustration, and all of that sort of thing, then when you have a quiet moment, whether it's that moment before you fall asleep or just, a moment in a serene environment, whatever those things are, and I can't tell you what they are because I don't know you that way, but you know yourself, right? Your consciousness is you, who you are. You know about that. And so you don't have to hide, people, go to a psychiatrist, they take drugs, they do this, or they go to a drug dealer and they get, lose their mind. But the idea is that your subconscious is a very powerful thing. And if you can focus on putting ideas in your subconscious yourself, that you are a good person, say, for example, that that you will do better at a particular task that maybe you're struggling with, that good things will come your way, all right, for good reasons, not for negative reasons. See, that's also the most important thing, excuse me. You don't mess around. The negativity is just not a good thing. There's enough negativity out there right now. And what I'm trying to get at is that how to push yourself into positive thinking, right? Because it's not enough to be say, hey, I'm a positive person, right? You have to understand that there's this subconscious thing that's been affected by other forces, by life experiences and other things that sometimes will work against your conscious mind. And you will make a decision sometimes with these subconscious thoughts, all right, that are not necessarily, you're not aware of almost. They're not, that's why it's called subconscious. It's not at the surface. Many psychologists have written about this stuff over the years. And like I say, I don't want to this isn't some kind of educational thing. This is just a discussion. All right. And just kind of, this wouldn't even be considered, subconscious 101. This is subconscious, 0.000, 01, right? It's not even an introduction to, okay? I'm just trying to, and I think you grasp what I'm saying. And that's why I've been like kind of, just vague about it, because it's about you. It's not about me or what I think you should do. These are things that be aware of your subconscious, the power of your subconscious, but whatever you do it yourself. Okay. And your life is your own. And remember that. And that only you will make the right decisions, right? So that you're different. You are a unique individual, and that, I can't tell you, and I shouldn't tell you, and no self-help book or whatever like that. You shouldn't seek it out that way either. I mean, you can, and millions of people do, but ultimately you're an individual, and that you know what I just said, and that's the way to do it. So try to program your subconscious for good, for your own good.
And whenever you're doing that, in conclusion, always be positive, and for the positive side of life. Never do, don't be negative with your subconscious, because the idea is that what you're trying to do is clear out the clutter of your subconscious that has been corrupted by a constant bombardment of those who who want to manipulate you and control you, or just, quite frankly, like in the subliminal case, to just sell you something, right? To make you a sucker. I always bring up the analogy. I haven't said this one in a long time, but I've said it before, is the idea of a car. That one of the most successful things that they've done to the human subconscious is to make us believe that a car is actually a thing of beauty, right? Think about that, and I found myself fall victim to that myself. That was such a strong indoctrinational thing that they've succeeded in doing. I mean, the same is with royalty too. The whole concept of the princess idea. They take a girl from when she's a child, and it's the Cinderella idea and the doll and the Barbie and whatever, and to marry a prince and become a princess, and that that is like the highest thing you could achieve. Well, the whole purpose of that, indoctrination in your subconscious, is so that as you mature and you become an adult, you have this feeling as if royalty is royalty. But in effect, these are people that have, these are slave owners. These are people that have laid claim to the land, and they say they own the land you live on, and that you should curtsy or bow before them. Imagine that. They're just human beings. They're people. But through that subconscious level, that's done. That has happened. And I mean, I'm immune to that. I laugh at that, and I've talked about that at other times. But that's a perfect example of the power of and over time, how through the subconscious they can create this thing to where that it's, oh, my lord, my lady, and you bow and you feel nervous around that. You see? In the US, they do it with even the presidency and political figures, right? You take a person who was just a regular, when I was younger, I used to I knew a guy who became a congressman, for example, right? And the moment he became a congressman, I noticed people would they were like, they would see him in a different light, like, oh, it might be nervous to be around him. Whereas opposed to me, it'd be like, hey man, let me, you want a beer? Let's talk. Let's just hang out. Because I see no difference there. It's the same guy, right? But we're programmed, our subconscious is programmed. And that's a thing that you have to say to, and you say, well, I don't know about that. Think about it. Well, then why else would you suddenly be nervous around the president of the United States or a congressman or whatever? The entertainment industry has done it, right? People are starstruck, right? And they get nervous around somebody who's so-called famous. Well, that's basically this has been done when they created the star system, the studios. And of course, back then they were probably subliminally doing it, because they have the power of that. And that's what public relations, right? Why people have publicists and all that stuff. And it's something that's so ingrained in our society now that it doesn't need to be done anymore. And maybe perhaps in 50 or 100 years, it would just vanish because if it's no longer kept up. but it was done for such a long for over generations that it's ingrained in our subconscious. The idea of being nervous around somebody who appeared in a television show, right? It makes no sense, right? Why would you be nervous around somebody who just appeared in a television show? Why would you be nervous around somebody who's like just suddenly in Congress or something like that? I'm not talking about respect for, somebody who's doing something. I'm not talking about respect. I'm talking about being starstruck, nervous, and bowing to the, my lord and lady, curtsying and being, And the same, they've done this in advertising. Like I say, one of the most obvious examples is the car. If you think of a car, all right, it's basically all it is a thing that you get in instead of a horse, right, or a carriage, right. It gets you to a point from point A to point B. It's got 4 wheels and a chair and a steering wheel, right? They add all these extras now, and all that stuff. But the idea is people look at it and like, wow, look at that Porsche. Look at that new. Have you seen the Corvette? Have you seen that, that new such and such? Wow. And you look at it and you go, it's beautiful. It's like, I want one of those. But you never think like I do. And I go like, well, why would I think that, that particular sports car or that particular thing is like this thing of beauty and this must have? See, my subconscious has been all of our subconscious has been programmed, for the car. Right. And that's why cars are one of the biggest commodities. Remember, last year was another banner year for car sales. That's why I call these people used car salesmen, and stuff, because it's a big thing. And that's how politics has become pop culture, because they built these people up to this cult of personality, which is no different than the idea of the woman wanting to marry a prince and become a princess and my lord and lady and bowing to the queen and stuff. These, in the star system. All right. That's the subconscious. Okay. That's the power of programming the subconscious, and why people why people have cognitive dissonance about something. So I could talk, they could see, that there's some kind of fraud was committed here, or that somebody did this, but they're in complete denial of it and they won't accept it. And that's how these things like conspiracy theories and tinfoil hat words are thrown out at people that like try to bring out the truth about something or expose a thing. You see, because it's so deeply programmed into your subconscious by these experts at that, the propagandists, right? And like I say, not everything is nefarious in the sense that it's evil in a sense of political world, domination type of thing. All right. Much of this is just to sell you cars or sell you an item or a brand, reinforce a brand. It's all manipulation. It just depends on who's doing the manipulation, on whether or not it's nefarious or, though to me, it's all nefarious because you're still messing with somebody's mind. You're messing with somebody's mind. It's a form of mind control. All right. And the only way to battle that, what I was trying to get at before is, in a vague way, because your mind is your own mind and I don't play that game. So I'm not going to try to tell you what to say, but you know what I mean. And so to combat these people that are hell bent on controlling you and manipulating you,
is that you have to put your own positive thoughts for whatever is weighing down on you or that you question. You have to basically kind of reprogram your subconscious to be the best you can be. And this wishing upon a star idea is that, that childlike dream, right? It's a prayer, I mean, it's the same as a prayer, really. And so whatever you want to call it, that's basically what, that's how you defeat it. That's how you defeat the, those who would mess with your mind, those who want to, program your subconscious to work against you. And because it's your subconscious, your conscious mind is not aware of it. It's not aware of this influence, this thing. In fact, it wrestles with the idea, and when you're confronted with it, you say you want to your subconscious will win over, because you'll go, well, no, the cars are beautiful, man. Cars are cool. I definitely want to get that thing. Have you seen that convertible Mustang? Man, that's so cool. I want to drive that, right? And so your subconscious has won. They've convinced you. And so the automotive manufacturers and the agencies and stuff have successfully done that. It's taken them, they've done this, I mean, the first cars that came out, nobody thought that Henry Ford Model T was some thing of beauty, right? I mean, it might have been a status symbol in a sense of like, hey, look, I've got a horseless carriage, right? But it wasn't, it certainly wasn't, it was just a thing, device, a four-wheeled thing, horseless carriage, as I say. So that's a prime example, as is the princess concept, my lord and lady, and the cult of personality, starstruck, and all those things. Those are very good examples, but this subconscious programming also operates on much more subtle levels. Excuse me. Got a frog in my throat, so to speak. And that's the ones that you want to really be scared of. And that's why you want to talk to yourself in that sense. In quiet moments, you want to make sure that you have intentions. You make, what your life intentions are, what positive thinking, and your goals and your dreams, your aspirations, to make those, so that your brain, your subconscious is helping your conscious mind realize those things, and move towards in that direction, that positive direction, and that it's good, not negative, And so, and in many ways, it's like in a childlike sense, that a child is, is wishing on a star, saying a prayer, hoping and dreaming of being, whatever. But those are good things. Those are good things. And that's why they've survived for, as far as we know, with Ptolemy, and the Greek myth of this, right? Because this isn't really, most people will think, oh, wish upon a star, that's some contemporary, Disney movie. Okay, for the sake of saying the word that, they could, like I say, that's that particular group, they're experts at that kind of stuff. So it's almost interesting in that, but I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the origin of that from 2,000, some close to 2,000 years ago, all right, where they got the idea. All right, let's get that clear. You can't copyright, something from 2,000 years ago. All right, that is written and proven to be, based on writings of some Greek astronomer. And it's sad that I have to basically say that because, excuse me. Sorry, just something. So, so if you can imagine it, you can achieve it. If you dream it, you can become it. And that's at the core of of this idea that I wanted to get across today. And that all this other interference that's out there right now, this idea of, I'm not, the things that are going on in the media, all media, whether it's the so-called alleged social media, which is farthest from social as you can be, or mainstream media, which is basically the legacy media, which is, falling flat on its face from ratings, or it's politics, the game of politics. Politics is pop culture, right? And the cult of personality of politicians or public figures, be they entertainers, politicians, TV personalities, news readers, whatever, sports figures, right? They're just people. They're just people. And the idea of having this cult of personality, this to be starstruck, to worship them, to ascribe certain things to these people that are no different than you, and the day before they shot a basket, right, or got a scholarship, they were the same as you, but they're more talented. Talent is relative. Everyone has talents, everyone has talents. We're different. That gets into the consciousness part of this. What is your consciousness? Your individuality. Remember, you have these five senses, and you have this human creativity that comes out of, I believe, out of consciousness. Your subconscious works against that. Your subconscious wants to make you function as a robot, as an android. That's your subconscious is trying to do. It's trying to say, push the right buttons when you watch that commercial, you listen to that newsreader, you listen to that candidate, you hear this proclamation. It wants you to, must obey. Yes, must do this, right? Do not question that. That person who's questioning it must be, eliminated, must be, erased. I must not listen to that person. I must not see, can't watch this. Quick, change this. Right? Do not watch this video. Yeah. That's how crazy it is. It's that crazy. Completely, utterly, messing with people's brains. But we don't see it that way. And the answer to it is simple. Your consciousness can overpower your subconsciousness. So the takeaway is that we know from my lord, my lady, and starstruck and all that stuff that this phenomenon exists. All right. There's no other explanation for it. Okay. You are reacting and responding in a certain way to various things, and you don't know why. Well, it's because your subconscious has been programmed. All right. So we know that. We have actual real world experience. Each of us can see ourselves. Like I say, I myself have found myself looking at a Porsche or a certain car and saying, wow,
but it's a four wheels and plastic and metal fused together to, to get you from point A to point B. It's no, all right. Okay. And, like I say, royalty, sports figures, whatever. These people aren't to be worshipped. They're just people. You can enjoy their, performance by somebody, but, to be nervous about them, no. So, okay. So we know that to be true. We know that's gone. We know that's happened. That's gone on. We know that that's there. We also know that we're compelled, that there's this whole thing about brand and brand loyalties, and that people, that advertising industry has used. I remember I spent my life in that industry, and that there are ways of manipulating people and making them feel as if this brand is important, is better than this other thing, or that you should do this, or you need this. If you don't have this, you're less of a person. If you don't buy this, or do this, or go that, wear this, right? That's advertising. That's part of this whole game, all right? The same type of people. Propaganda and advertising are one and the same. That's why politicians spend so much money on advertising. Think about it. What do campaign contributions go to? What's the vast majority of campaign contributions go to? Advertising. All right. And so it's the idea of mind. And what is advertising? It's a form of mind control, manipulation, exposing you to a constant bombardment of a certain ideology, certain imagery, certain audio clips, certain way that different things are edited together, slogans, all these proven things to make you believe something that may or may not be true. And in most cases isn't true. It's manipulation. It's mind control. And, you have to come up with, you are an individual. So, those of us who have, who have a stronger sense of consciousness, right? Like I say, the fight or flight, those who are, right? Well, they're like, oh, I gotta, they'll obey anything. But those of us who have the fight concept built into us, we tend to see through this kind of thing, or question it every time, or if we find ourselves somehow going down a path of of acting like a robot, we catch ourselves and say, what am I doing? Why would I want to do that? And so my thing is that I think you should wish upon a star. I think that's a good thing. I think you should have these hopes, aspirations, dreams, positive thinking, intentions, good intentions, and that you should be, and that the more time in quiet moments you spend, in that, focused on the good, on being the best that you could be, so to speak, that the better you will be, and that good things will happen to those, who pursue good things, right? And so that, like, again, this idea of, if you can imagine it, you can achieve it. But imagine good things, all right? Don't allow these negative forces and all these other inputs, right? However, even though some are harmless, some are just trying to sell you potato chips, all right? But it's still a form of control. It's a manipulation. And the idea is that, so dream it and become it, like that quote. The good,
the best you, the ideal you. And like I've said before in many times, is that unlike when you were in school or someone tried to pigeonhole you, kids in the schoolyard, excuse me, maybe somebody made fun of you, or you had, they gave you a nickname or something ridiculous like that. You could reinvent yourself now that you're an adult. You could reinvent yourself every day. And reinvent yourself. If you're not happy with the way things are going, people are perceiving your life's path, reinvent yourself. You are your own person. That's what consciousness is. Consciousness is you. You are your consciousness. You are not your subconsciousness, and you are not your bioelectric brain. Okay? You are your consciousness. That's your, it depends. You could call it whatever you want to. It's your soul, if you will. Okay? It's your consciousness. That's you. That's the person that you are. You're not just a mechanical brain with eyes, ears, and all that stuff. Now you can utilize all of these things, but it's out of all of that sensory input, all right, that we have, that feeds our consciousness, and out of that consciousness is born creativity. And every human is creative. Every human has creativity. And that's why I say, someone will say, well, their argument about their confusion with respecting an individual as opposed to being starstruck, is because they think, well, that person is better than I am at doing this, doing that. Well, first of all, there's two things about that. What's the whole idea of comparison is kind of ridiculous and absurd to begin with. Better at performing a silly human trick. Okay, shooting a basket, and some sports people, this will drive them up a wall, but I don't care. All right, shooting a basket, a 3-pointer, is just a silly human trick. It's somebody who spent an awful lot of time on a court practicing to, make a 3-point shot. Congratulations. You've mastered a silly human trick. Okay? Now I'm supposed to be starstruck? Worship you? Hey, could I have your autograph because you mastered a silly human trick? I'm going to watch you on TV, get a subscription to this thing. That's how I look at it. Now, I know other people don't. I'm going to memorize statistics based on this. There's a difference between playing a game. Like I said, I've played sports when I was younger. There's a difference between playing a game and enjoying it and fun and even watching sports. But this idea of starstruck is idiocy. All right? It's idiocy. No, but better. So what? Somebody's mastered a particular thing. Congratulations. You can appreciate it, but don't be nervous to be around them. Right? Well, that person was trying to master the 3-point shot, all right, by just doing it repeatedly. Maybe you were reading books, all right, and you have all this knowledge in your mind, or maybe you mastered a different thing, another a different talent, another task, that you could perform better than anyone else. Everyone has something that they can do, and anyone can do can master a task. But we're all not capable of doing the exact same things, because then that would we would no longer be individuals. So you can respect a person for having for doing something, having a talent, or having done something that you didn't do. Like, I know I have friends who are, who've climbed, the highest peaks, the 7 summits, and who've been to, the North Pole, and have Antarctica, and have done unbelievable type of things. Okay. So I have great respect for these individuals. All right. For having accomplished that thing. Though I have no desire to climb Everest myself. All right. Now, it's not to say that doesn't lessen the fact that I respect that other person. But these people are just friends of mine. I don't get nervous when I'm around them. I'm not starstruck, They call me on the phone and we talk about the same stuff as you would talk to any of fellow friend about. Okay. They're just, they're people. So you can respect a person for their accomplishments in life. All right. But you can't allow, this cult of personality and starstruckness and the subconscious to mess with your mind. And that's what I'm trying to say in using those particular examples. And perhaps I shouldn't have used, the sports analogy, because, that's a big thing in our culture. And so some people might take offense to that. But you could use it in any category of human experience. So I just happen to choose that one because it is one of the most obvious and one of the most popular things that we're all aware of. So going forward, like I said, that's why I wanted this to be a positive, show today, is that you have a consciousness, you're an individual, you have creativity, follow your path, like the Joseph said, what's his name? Like I say, I'm so terrible with names. Joseph Campbell. Joseph Campbell said, follow your bliss. All right. And to me, that is the most important thing. Follow your bliss. And so whatever it is that you makes you happy, whatever it is that you want the most, follow that path. Make that happen. And you make that happen by believing in it. Okay. If you can dream it, you can imagine it, then you can achieve it. All right. You have to be realistic. All right. But yeah, if you can dream it, you can become it. If it's possible, if it's realistic, you can't be unrealistic. Say, I want to be the ruler of the, of the universe or something like that. Excuse me. Or you want to go to Mars, and you're not in physical shape to go to Mars, or you're too old or whatever. But realistic goals. And as long as and positive and good, so positive thinking, good intentions, wishing upon a star, that these things will actually help you in life. And they will help combat the negative subconscious input that you're being bombarded with on a daily basis. Excuse me. See, I guess my subconscious is saying, don't, is battling me from bringing this truth out to you. I jest, but it's almost like that. It's almost that bad. That's how strong the subconscious is. So if you ever find yourself responding to something, doing something that just isn't you or isn't right, or you're caught in situations and say, how did I get into this situation? I don't want to, this isn't me. Question that, right? And take the steps to, to have good intentions, to think positively. And there's nothing wrong with wishing upon a star. There's nothing wrong with, what was that? I don't know, was it Roberta Flack or one of those people, say a little prayer, that song from the 70s or something. It was one of those type of people. I forget who it was. All of these things are good things. As long as you do what you do is positive, you'll see positive results from it. I guess people who are negative, they end up seeing negative results, but that's the problem we have in this world. There's too much negativity. There's too many people who are megalomaniacs, too many people that are caught up in power and greed, too many people that are up to nefarious things. It's terrible. I think I found my limit. It usually gets to this point. It's like I'm at 1 hour and 55 minutes. It's like I don't think I can talk, this early in the morning for 2 hours, which is probably why and I think I've said this before, why singers always, some of the best albums vocalists ever recorded, they recorded that stuff like in the wee hours of the morning, late in the day, very late in the day, or like after midnight. You'd be surprised how many like classic singers record at night. Why concerts are start later, because the human voice is just useless in the morning. So I think I made myself clear on that. It took a long time. I've covered a lot of territory. I danced around a few things along the way, but the reason I did that was because, like I said, I want you to, it's up to you to be your own person. It's not for me to tell you what to say, what to think before you go to sleep, what to wish upon a star. Only you know that. But by being aware that there are influences that are targeting our subconscious that we're all aware of, right? Some we're not. We're aware of things we're not aware of. But that, that's the advertising industry. That's the public relations industry. That's political campaigns. That's the World Economic Forum, the Great Reset. That's all these things that we're being told. That's why there's repetitive, why you watch every network and they repeat the same story almost with the same words, day in, day out, why they all jump on the same thing. And when you see that stuff happening, you should go, wait, that's weird. They're all saying the same thing. And you might say, well, it's the news. It's the thing. No, they're messing with your mind. It's mind control. Remember, it is a corporatocracy, and there are people up here who are puppeteers pulling strings. Everything below, all right, is affected. And what you have to do is you have to, knowing that there are puppeteers, then you can cut those strings and not be the marionette. And oddly enough, the puppeteer, right, and the so-called marionette happens to play into the wishing upon a star, story that we're really not talking about, if you gather my drift. Anyway, excuse me. I hope I made myself clear, right? Thanks for watching. Think positive, good intentions, right? Be aware of the subconscious mind. You are your conscious mind. You are consciousness, all right? That's your personality. And you can accomplish anything you want to. anything within reason. And you will. I believe you will. I believe in you. All right. I believe you can do it. I know it can be done. And you just have to have that kind of certainty in yourself. All right. So, good morning. Good morning. I hope this wasn't too heavy a topic to discuss. I don't think it was. And I hope it's positive. I hope it was positive for you. So until the next time, take care. Good luck with everything. Have a great Sunday. I'll talk to you this week. Cheers. Peace.